You step off a dusty stagecoach in a town with no name, the sun blistering above, your boots hitting the splintered wooden planks of a rickety sidewalk. You hear a door creak, a piano playing off-key in a saloon, and a gunshot echo in the distance. Welcome to the Wild West, and let me be honest with you, you wouldn't last a single day. Tonight we journey through the harsh truths of life in the American frontier, the dangers, the diseases, the duels, and why our romantic view of the West is far from the reality. So sit back, relax, and let the dust settle. This is Sleepy History, the Wild West, a period that spans roughly from 1865 to 1895, a time of expansion, chaos, and survival. But it wasn't filled with sheriffs and shootouts alone. These were lands barely tamed, with no paved roads, no plumbing, and no government oversight. Lawless, vast, and often deadly. Most towns were thrown up overnight, built by gold seekers, railroad workers, and opportunists. They often lacked clean water, medical care, and sometimes even names. Wooden buildings were slapped together with scrap. Streets were covered in mud and horse waste, and in the summer heat, disease spread like wildfire. The romantic version of the West? That came later. You know those iconic shootouts in old Western movies? They're not just Hollywood. Gunfights were real and frequent. Dueling was common, especially in saloons where liquor, pride, and gambling mixed. Towns like Dodge City, Deadwood, and Tombstone were dangerous hubs. In Tombstone alone, the average lifespan of a newcomer was measured in months. And here's the thing. Justice was inconsistent. If someone shot you in a drunken fight, the worst they might get was a fine. That's if you had witnesses or friends. The OK Corral? That infamous gunfight lasted 30 seconds and left 3 men dead. But bullets weren't the main killer. The real danger? Water. Most settlers drank from streams tainted by livestock waste. Cholera, dysentery, typhoid fever ran rampant. There were no hospitals, just traveling doctors who often carried more whiskey than medicine. Surgery was done without anesthetic. Amputation was common. Listen to this entry from an 1872 diary. My boy took ill. He cried through the night. No doctor within 50 miles. We boiled roots, but they did not help. He passed before sunrise. The average life expectancy? Mid-30s. If disease didn't get you, the land might. The West was dry, barren, and unpredictable. Tornadoes, drought, dust storms, rattlesnakes, wolves, even wildfires. Food was limited. Hunting required skill, and farming was nearly impossible in dry seasons. Imagine trying to build a life from scratch. Every nail, every log, every drop of clean water had to be fought for. And shelter? One windstorm could destroy a home. Forget what you know about sheriffs saving the day. Most of them were outgunned and underpaid. Justice was local and personal. Vigilante groups often decided punishments. Public hangings were both execution and entertainment. In Montana, one vigilante group simply carved 3777 on doors. It meant, leave town or die. Many towns didn't even have jails. If you were caught stealing, you might be chained to a post in the middle of town as punishment. Let's meet a few people who did survive the West. Clara Brown, a freed slave who crossed the plains and became a philanthropist in Colorado. Bass Reeves, a black deputy U.S. Marshal who arrested over 3,000 outlaws. Calamity Jane, scout, sharpshooter, and nurse. She braved the wilderness with grit unmatched. But even they weren't immune to disease, heartbreak, and loss. They didn't survive because it was easy. They survived because they never had a choice. So now, imagine again. You're stepping into the West. There are no phones, no medicine, no safety net, no police to call, no groceries, no air conditioning, just you, your grit, and a six-shooter. Still think you'd make it? Probably not. But that's okay. Because now you can just listen, drift off, and let history whisper you to sleep. This has been Sleepy History. Until next time. Good night. But what if you had survived? What would your days look like? Perhaps you rise with the sun, the chill biting through your woolen blanket. You walk barefoot across a dirt floor, light the fire, and boil water, if you're lucky enough to have any left from the night before. Maybe your job is to tend cattle, or trap furs, or walk 5 miles just to buy flour. If you're a woman, you split logs, raise children, and guard the homestead from wolves. Or men. At night, there's no rest, only the groan of wind through cracks in the walls, the howl of coyotes, and the distant sound of a horse that shouldn't be there. You clutch your rifle tighter. In some ways, surviving the Wild West wasn't about bravery. It was about stubbornness, grit, the refusal to die. A letter from 1884 reads, "We lost the roof in the storm. Henry has not returned from town. Coyotes took a hen. I shall not cry. Tomorrow I will mend the roof myself." And so, the days pass, each one uncertain, each one demanding more than the last. But from these hard lives came stories, stories of the people who carved homes from rock and desert, who raised families in the dust, who planted corn where nothing grew. These people, your great-great-grandparents perhaps, they didn't just survive. They laid the bones of a nation. And when you look back, through the lens of history, past the Hollywood myths, past the legends and the cowboy hats, you see them. Tired eyes, dirty hands, strong hearts. The real Wild West. So let that thought rock you gently, like a wagon wheel over old trail ruts. Good night, traveler. Let me tell you about one ordinary afternoon in an ordinary frontier town. It was the kind of day where heat pressed down on the earth like a wet wool blanket. Chickens scratched at dry soil, dogs panted in the shade of wagons, and the town's one-eyed mule wouldn't stop braying. That's when he arrived, a stranger, on horseback, dust-covered hat, rifle across the back. His horse's hooves left ghost prints in the road as he trotted into town. No one knew his name, but everyone stopped to watch him, because in the West, a stranger could mean two things: trouble, or trouble you hadn't met yet. He dismounted in front of the saloon and tied the reins to a post, already leaning from last week's storm. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. Just walked through the swinging doors like he'd been doing it for years. Inside, the piano went quiet, and that's how it always was out here. You could live next to a man for 6 months, share meals, share storms, and still never know what brought him west. Grief? Greed? A body buried behind him? In this town, stories weren't told out loud. They were told in scars, in notches on pistols, in missing fingers. No one asked questions. You learned fast. Curiosity didn't survive long past the Mississippi. The stranger ordered a drink, whiskey, no ice, no water, no words. Behind him, the old barkeep, name was Albie, watched close. Albie had been a Union soldier, lost 2 toes to frostbite, and his son to smallpox. He didn't scare easy. But that stranger, even he made Albie squint a little longer. The silence lingered. Dust motes floated in the shafts of sunlight like slow-moving ghosts. Outside, someone's horse neighed in nervous warning. Then the sound, leather creaking, a hand sliding over wood. Someone made a mistake. They reached for their belt, and the stranger? He didn't even turn around. He just said, in a voice smooth as worn leather, "Don't." That was it. One word. And no one in that saloon so much as blinked after that. The stranger didn't stay long. By sundown, he was gone again, vanishing down the canyon path like a whisper caught in wind. No one followed. No one dared. And for weeks after, the town talked about him in hushes, not because of what he did, but because of what he didn't. In the West, it was never about being the fastest draw. It was about being the last one left standing. And sometimes it was about walking away before the story ever had a chance to start. Her name was Eleanor Dunn. The town called her the Widow on the Ridge, though most folks had never spoken a word to her. She lived alone in a crooked cabin perched above a creek that dried up every August. They said her husband died in a mining accident. Others claimed he never existed. In the West, truth often got buried faster than the bodies. What we do know is this: she stayed. She was no outlaw, no gunslinger, just a woman with soil under her nails and a stare sharp enough to split pine. They say she once killed a mountain lion with a shovel. When asked why, she simply said, "Because I didn't have time to be eaten." Her daily life was a rhythm of survival. At dawn, she chopped wood. No one helped her. There were no neighbors, no kin, just a battered axe and a promise to see one more sunrise. Her hands were hard, her back crooked from hauling buckets of well water up the hill. She kept goats, shot rabbits, tanned her own hides with brains and ash, sewed her dresses from flour sacks. On Sundays, she lit a candle in the window and read a Bible missing half its pages. She said the important parts were still there. One winter, the river froze solid and the food ran out. Most would have begged for help or left. Eleanor did neither. Instead, she trapped birds with string and snow, ate pine bark boiled into broth, and when spring came, she walked barefoot into town, traded the pelt of a fox for seed potatoes, and left without a word. The town watched her sometimes from the road below, a distant figure moving behind her cabin, smoke rising from her crooked chimney, a light still flickering long after sundown. When bandits came through that part of the ridge, they never approached her place. Why? Because once, 3 of them tried. They didn't leave with their horses or their boots. The sheriff found them tied to a pine with bruises and broken pride. One of them said she smiled while she did it, like she'd done worse before. Eleanor never denied it. She never said much of anything. But folks knew. The West had a way of bending people, some into graves, others into legends. And Eleanor Dunn, she was both. So when you think of the Wild West, don't just picture men with dust on their boots and iron on their hips. Remember the woman who held a rifle with one hand and fed a goat with the other, who outlived the storms, the droughts, the loneliness, and every man who underestimated her. In the spring of 1862, a wagon train left Independence, Missouri, heading west toward California. 34 people, 7 wagons, 24 oxen, a dream of land, freedom, and gold. But by mid-July, the land turned against them. They'd taken a wrong fork in the trail near the Salt Flats. The map was hand-drawn. The guide had left after the first week. And now the desert stretched ahead like a mirage that never ended. The sun burned through hats and bonnets. Water barrels went dry. Tongues cracked. Oxen collapsed in the sand. And at night, the wind howled so loud it sounded like a scream from beneath the earth. They kept moving because there was no other choice. One of them, Jonathan Bell, 42, father of three, kept a journal. Bits of it survived. He wrote, "Third day without water. Buried two more this morning. Wind took the canvas off wagon 5. The girl won't wake." By the girl, he meant Annie, his youngest, just 6 years old. That night, they dug a shallow hole with tin cups, not for water, but for Annie. The next morning, Jonathan's wife, Martha, walked into the desert alone. She didn't take her bonnet or shoes. She was never seen again. By week's end, only 9 were left. 1 wagon, no oxen. They pulled it themselves. One woman, Mrs. Quinn, 58 years old and blind in one eye, refused to stop singing hymns. Her voice, soft and cracked, drifted behind them like smoke. On the 10th day, the boy named Samuel, 14, spotted something on the horizon. Smoke. A rider. They'd stumbled into a Paiute camp. The Paiute didn't shoot. They didn't turn them away. Instead, they gave them water, food, let them rest. And for the first time in weeks, no one died that night. The survivors reached California in early September. They were thinner, quieter, shadows of themselves, but alive. Jonathan Bell would never remarry. His 2 sons became farmers. Samuel joined a postal route between Oregon and Arizona. Mrs. Quinn lived another 8 years and died with a hymn on her lips. Only Annie remained behind, a small wooden marker in the sand, marked with a single word, loved. They called the West untamed. But it wasn't just the land, it was time. Time that swallowed people whole and left behind only footprints, journals, and forgotten trails. Eli Morgan was not born an outlaw. He grew up on a farm in Kentucky, 3rd son of a preacher, plowed fields by 9, read psalms by candlelight by 11. But the war changed him. When the smoke cleared, he didn't return home. He rode west instead, carrying more scars than luggage, and a Colt Navy revolver he never once polished. They say Eli's first kill was a Confederate officer who'd whipped his brother. His last kill? No one knows for sure. Could have been number 30. Could have been number 70. Out west, legends stretch longer than the truth. By the time he reached his 40s, Eli was a wanted man in 5 territories. He robbed banks in Kansas, held up trains in New Mexico, and once shot his way out of a courtroom in Dodge City. But he never killed for money, only when cornered, only when looking someone in the eyes. He had a code, a dusty, twisted kind of honor. No women, no children, no drunks. And if you drew first, you better not miss. The end came not with a bullet, but with a cough, tuberculosis. By then, he was hiding under a false name, Mr. Kane, in a mining town called Alder's Bluff, working odd jobs, paying in gold coin no one dared question. But the marshals found him, 4 of them. They waited until morning, until the fog rolled in like ghosts from the canyon. And when he stepped out onto the porch with a blanket wrapped over his shoulders, they raised their rifles. He didn't flinch. He didn't reach for his gun. He just looked at them. "Took you long enough," he said. "I buried more men than that before breakfast." He didn't resist, didn't run, just rode with them, slowly, through the canyon pass, coughing, smiling, whistling a tune no one recognized. When they reached the jail, a boy, maybe 12, peeked through the bars and whispered, "Are you the outlaw?" Eli looked at the boy, long and sad. "Once," he said, "but not today." They hanged him 2 weeks later. He asked for no last words, no sermon, no prayer, just a pencil and paper. Afterward, the sheriff found a single sentence on the page. "The West took everything but my name. Let it have that too." No one ever found his stash. No one ever found his grave. Just stories. And in the Wild West, sometimes, that's all you leave behind. Her name was Tali, a Shawnee woman, born under a willow tree on the banks of a river that no longer flows the same. She did not wear feathers for show or speak in broken English for the benefit of white traders. She was no character in a storybook. She was real, and so was her pain. Tali's people had lived in the valley for generations, long before it had a name on a map, long before the missionaries brought their Bibles and the railroad brought its steel. She remembered when the wind didn't carry gunpowder, when buffalo moved like black rivers across the plains, when her father taught her to find water by listening to the ants. She remembered, and then she watched it all change. At first came the men with beards and tired eyes. They traded salt and needles for pelts. Then came the soldiers. They took land with ink and paper, not war clubs, with promises spoken through translators who'd already forgotten their own language. They said it was legal. They said it was destiny. But Tali knew better. Her brother was shot trying to defend a burial site. Her mother died the winter after their lodge was burned. And when the army gave her people new land 2 valleys away, the river didn't follow. The land was dry. The corn didn't grow. The babies didn't make it to spring. One night, under a moon shaped like a cracked bowl, Tali packed her few belongings into a woven bag and walked back toward the river, alone. She found the old tree, the willow, its roots now dug into dirt blackened by coal smoke. She sat and sang, not a war song, not a prayer, a memory. "I was not made to forget," she whispered, "and neither is this land." She didn't return to the reservation. She lived the rest of her days in the shadow of the ridge, gathering herbs, teaching lost children how to read the stars, not in books, but in silence. The settlers called her a witch. The young called her grandmother Earth, but the river simply remembered. Tali died during the summer of the Great Drought, alone, at peace, a crow circling above. They never found her body. Only a bundle of feathers, a bowl filled with wild berries, and one line scratched into a flat stone near the roots of the willow. We are still here. History is often written with ink and guns, but some stories, the ones carved by wind, water, and memory, live in silence. The fire is low now, just embers. And in those fading coals, if you watch closely, you might still see them. The outlaw riding into the canyon, the widow fixing a broken roof with splinters in her hands, the wagon train clawing its way through the sand, the stranger in the saloon, the child whispering across jail bars, and Tali, beneath the willow, humming songs older than any map. They are all still here, in the dust, in the bones of the land, in the wind that whistles between forgotten towns, in the silence that follows a gunshot or the cry of a coyote. You see, history isn't locked away in books. It's out here, waiting, sleeping under stones, stirring in dreams. You've traveled far tonight, past broken trails, through smoke and prayer, through thunder and drought, and now the trail ends. For tonight. But the stories never do. So close your eyes now. Let your thoughts wander like smoke into the stars. And if you dream of wide plains, dusty roads, and a stranger watching from under the brim of a hat, don't be afraid. That's just the West, remembering you back. Good night, traveler. Sleep well, and may you rise tomorrow with grit in your heart and dust on your boots.